To the senators and the men and women of the United States House of Representatives, you placed an enormous trust in me, an enormous leap of faith, one that I didn't know that I could possibly earn back, but I'm going to spend every single day on this job doing so. The fact that you placed the confidence you did in me has inspired me to reach new heights at this job. I promise you the following. There will be accountability within the FBI and outside of the FBI, and we will do it through rigorous constitutional oversight starting this weekend.
Yeah.
I like it. I bet you I don't like it as much as Steve and Garret like it, but I like it quite a bit. Joining me now, the brave FBI whistleblowers who spoke out before it was comfortable and easy to do so. Garret O'Boyle, Steve Friend. Okay, Steve, let's start. Oh, by the way, co-hosts of the American Radicals podcast, which I would highly recommend. Hey, Steve, first reaction, Kash Patel gets in there. Do you feel vindicated, relieved? Are you still apprehensive? Where are you at?
I'd say cautiously optimistic. If I've learned anything over the last 2.5 years, you don't get too excited, you don't get too down. These things are always sort of in flux. But when you see the remarks that Kash made there at his speech there after he gets sworn in as the FBI director, I'm very enthused about that, because one of the big drums that I've been beating for the last 2.5 years is how the FBI has gotten away from its prime directive. The prime directive to follow the process, which is rigorous obedience to the Constitution, adherence to the rule of law, respect for civil rights, not concerned with the outcome. You gather the facts, you present them, and then with the facts support a conviction, that's the facts. If they don't, that's the facts. It's not on you. Unfortunately, though, over the last 4 years, we've seen the FBI get away from that, and they're really concerned about the outcome. They put their thumb, if not their entire arm, on the scale, and that is not in keeping with the way that we historically do law enforcement in this country.
Garret, we all saw the news yesterday that Dan Bongino is going to be deputy director. Obviously, it depends on who you are and how you look at life. Some people are doing backflips today. Some people are spiking the fine china off the kitchen floor. What's happening in the O'Boyle household?
Similar to Steve, I think so. Steve just hit his 29-month suspendiversary. Mine's coming up here in 2 days. So we have learned to try and just remain even, and it's difficult. My wife was saying last night, that I can't imagine what you're going through. To me, I'm like, well, hey, this affects you equally too, and also already hearing from people in the FBI, most of which are excited for this duo of Kash and Dan. And I think, though, there's going to be a learning curve for both. Neither have much experience with or certainly in the FBI, so they're going to have to work hard to surround themselves with people who understand the Bureau and can help them implement and make positive change to the agency. And so the learning curve is a bit steep, I think, but at least we know we have two people who are truly seeking to do the right thing. As Steve mentioned with Kash's speech, that's what you get with Kash Patel. He didn't have prepared remarks. He spoke from the heart. All my interactions with him have been that way. And out of all of the people in the swamp, so to speak, he has struck me as one of very few who are genuine.
Steve, help us understand, because we're on the outside looking in. We've never been in where you guys are. Help us understand, can Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, can these guys, can they be frozen out by people who want to keep things going the way they're going? Are there walls that could be put up that they won't be able to see around or break through?
There will be if they allow the status quo to remain. I mean, there is basically a tried and true concept that gets applied to any sort of new director. They get bubble wrapped. You heard Christopher Wray constantly talk about how he had oversight of the FBI, not really leadership or even management. They're going to have to resist that temptation. They're going to have a lot of senior executives who have been in the agency for the last decade and a half, maybe 2 decades, that are at the Hoover building. They're going to immediately come around them, surround them, try to get them off course. Get them involved in things that are not really mission focused. Well, why don't you go visit one of the 55 field offices and go press the flesh? Why don't you go film a video for X, as opposed to bringing about and implementing the real change, the mandate that was sent last November during the presidential election, and then with the appointment of Kash Patel and now with Dan Bongino, about bringing about the major reforms, getting rid of the quota system, integrated program management, eliminating the intelligence collection entirely from the FBI, and then rethinking the way that they're doing and bringing in personnel and actually making merit paramount as opposed to diversity, and then bringing about people through the training program that takes capable and meritorious people and makes them effective investigators, as opposed to being a washout program for people who never are going to pass muster to begin with.
Garret, we are hearing that Kash is already relocating, if you will, hundreds of FBI employees outside of D.C. Is this, in your mind, a good start, something horrific? What do you think about this?
I think it's a great start, but get this, Jesse, right out of the gates after he put that forward, 500 headed to Alabama, 1,000 heading out to the field, because they want to clear out the DC apparatchik. That absolutely is what needs to be done. It's a great place to start. But right away, I heard from someone who is in a position to know the details, said that these people are already trying to subvert that order. They said, "Oh, don't worry about it. We're going to do what we call paper transfers, and we're going to make it look like, yes, we're assigned in Alabama now or wherever else. But in reality, we're going to stay right here and continue our subversive Marxist ways." And I forwarded that on to Kash, and I think he's preparing a game plan for it already. But there's going to be a viper around every turn, and so I think both Dan and Kash have a tremendous battle ahead of them, and I think it's going to take, if not the entire Trump administration this time around, much longer to quote unquote fix the FBI, if it even can be fixed.
Steve, I keep hearing things like that from people I trust who have sources inside the FBI. Can you help me understand the mentality of the non-Marxist types? I realize that we have a bunch of those in there, that courtesy of Barack Obama and others, but is it just run-of-the-mill arrogance? Is that what it is? I don't think I could ever imagine just saying, I don't care what my boss wants, I'll lie about it, I'll figure out a way around it. What is it?
I think it's a combination of two main things. One is hubris, like you're citing there. You're told from day one just how awesome you are if you work for the FBI. You're the premier law enforcement agency. You applied for the job and 50,000 other people applied for that exact seat and you were selected. And then I think it's also a rather large organization, which allows them to compartmentalize your responsibilities. And you're vetted as a person of integrity, someone who endeavors to be a professional. You would hope the person takes that upon themselves to do the best job that they can do. But then you just have human nature, and you're going to be compartmentalized into a small responsibility and then just focus on that and say, hey, look, is this legal, ethical, constitutional? Yeah, passes muster. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. But what's necessary is, if you're a real law enforcement professional, someone who takes that oath seriously, is to take the step back and look at the full mosaic. So anecdotal, but to me, I was told to drive someone, a January 6th subject who was going to be arrested with a SWAT team when a SWAT team was unnecessary. It was somebody who was going to cooperate. And they said, Steve, your only job is to drive them. Once they're apprehended, drive them to court. That's it. You're just Uber. And I said to them, look, it's incumbent on me to take the step back, look at the entire process and realize, yes, I'm not putting the Zyklon B into the chamber, but I am actually putting them on the cattle car. So that sort of structure, the way that they can actually compartmentalize your responsibilities and then leave people sort of in a compromised position and feeling really good about themselves, all those are cultural aspects that need to be corrected. And I think it can be done really from this week one of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino at the helm.
Gentlemen, well, you know what? I have to ask about the ATF real quick. Garret, I'll toss that with you before I let it go. Kash is apparently going to head up the ATF now. Please tell me he's just going to end the whole thing. What do you make of all this?
I hope that's the truth, is that he's put there just as the figurehead to dismantle it. And if there are any necessary components to it, which I don't think that there are, then they can come and fall under the banner of the FBI. Because what do we need all these federal law enforcement agencies for? I think we have seen enough signs so far early on in this administration that the goal is to dismantle the government bloat, and the ATF is certainly a huge piece of that. And one last thing I want to add, if I can, Jesse, is way back in the beginning of all this, right around the time Well, in Cash's regard, before Steve and I testified, shortly after we were suspended, we were put in touch with Cash and his foundation, and he stepped forward and provided financial support to both Steve and I to get our families through the holidays. He was castigated and derided for that, as we were when we testified. But then even after we testified, Kyle Seraphin, I know he's a fellow friend of yours, as suspendable to us. But Dan Bongino then donated, I think, $5,000 or $10,000 to the Give, Send, Go campaign that was started for us. And then fast forward a few months later, Christopher Wray testified that we would potentially be violating federal law if we were to accept that money. So it shows the kindness and generosity of both of these men. But as I think we all know who've been paying attention to them over the years, they also have that tenacity that is needed in these positions to come forward and bring truth and justice where it is needed. And so I'm looking forward to it. I wish them both the best. And if they want to tap us on the shoulder for some assistance, I think both of us would be open to it.
Yeah, I hope they do. Gentlemen, as always, you're welcome here anytime. Thank you so much. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.